Good evening, universe. Tonight I'm going to be talking about the Kyoshi Duology. This was written by F.C. and it takes place in the Avatar The Last Airbender Legend of Korra universe. I'm going to start with some non-spoilery thoughts, then I'm going to go into spoilers. Don't worry, I'll give a heads up. And then finally, I'll give you kind of a wrap-up overall opinion about what I thought of these books. I will, however, be proceeding with the assumption that you have watched the Avatar The Last Airbender series. I will be assuming that you have a little bit of knowledge about the universe. I don't know how to think of these books without having that context. I feel like it would be a kind of a strange thing to pick up if you weren't already a fan. So if you're still listening, I am assuming you have watched the show, and that means that you know that Kyoshi is one of the Avatar incarnations. In the show, she is presented as one of Aang's past lives. These books follow her life. So Kyoshi actually doesn't know at the beginning of the book that she is the Avatar. In this book series, there has been some kind of weird mix-up with finding the Avatar. The usual methods that they use to determine who the Avatar is have not worked. So the Avatar has been found with kind of unorthodox methods, and the person that they think is the Avatar is a young man named Yoon. Kyoshi is basically the foster daughter of one of the people who is helping to train this Avatar, Yoon. This person's name is Kelsang. He is an air nomad, and he was actually friends with the previous Avatar. Also included in this group of people trying to train him is a man named Shansu, who is an earthbender like Kyoshi. Yoon is also from the Earth Kingdom. He is known to be an earthbender as well. The other person in our main cast of characters is Ranji, who is a firebender and daughter of a prominent Fire Nation woman. She is the headmistress of the military academy for the Fire Nation. So Ranji, her daughter, is Yoon and Kyoshi's age, and these are going to be our three main characters. Near the beginning of the first book, there is a terrible tragedy that occurs in Kyoshi's life, and she spends these books trying to get revenge against the person who orchestrated the tragedy. When she finds out she's the Avatar, she is significantly less interested in the spiritual side of trying to use those powers to better the world, and much more interested in knowing that she has all these powers that she can use to get revenge. But in order for her to use those abilities, she has to find masters of all the elements. Obviously, she still has her good friend Ranji to be able to teach her fire, but she also has a little problem with her earth bending, by which I mean she can't bend little things. She can only use earth bending on a massive scale, which seems like it would maybe not be that bad of a thing, but when she's trying to bend small amounts of stuff so that she doesn't damage literally everything in the area and all of her allies, it becomes problematic when all she can do is these massive earthquakes or rending the earth in half or things like that. She can't float pebbles or anything like that. She can throw boulders, but she can't do small things. And so she has this problem of being unable to be precise with her earthbending. So this takes place mostly in the Earth Kingdom as Kyoshi runs around trying to find other benders who will be able to teach her the skills that she needs in order to wreak her revenge. Along the way, she's also going to encounter criminals, romance, sins of the past, political intrigue, mysteries, and ancient unknowable beings. So this duology has a much darker tone than Avatar The Last Airbender, which you can probably tell because her main goal is the exact opposite from Aang's, in that she actively wants to murder somebody and wants to get the abilities of the Avatar in order to facilitate that murder. So from here, I'm going to be moving into spoilers. So if you want to avoid them, go ahead and skip ahead. There will be a timestamp on the screen to when it will be safe, and I'll see you there for my general thoughts. The tragic event that occurs is that Yoon and Kyoshi's father figure Kelsang are both murdered by Jansu. Well, sort of. They're murdered by Jansu and a spirit. The spirit is known by several names throughout the series, but it basically looks like a giant, disgusting eyeball. And it has a bunch of tentacles, and all the tentacles have human teeth poking out of it, so that when it grabs you with the tentacles, it chews you with a tentacle tooth. situation. It's very gross. This creature is not okay. So this is a spirit. It's known as Father Glowworm. Later it's known as the World Borer, or that which sits in the hole. I like World Borer the best, even though it's kind of hard to say. So that's the one that I'm going to be going with. So the issue is basically that Kyoshi has done something to indicate that it could be possible that Kyoshi is the avatar rather than Yoon, because him being the avatar is based on kind of circumstantial evidence, and then Kyoshi presents some circumstantial evidence of her own. I think she recites a poem that the previous incarnation used to say, whereas Yoon was selected because he does an exact strategy in Pai Sho, you know, the game with the tiles. He does the exact strategy that the previous life used to do. So that's why they think he's the avatar. But then when she says that exact poem, Kelsang is like, oh no, I remember him saying that poem. It's possible that Kyoshi's the avatar. So Shansu tries to figure this out by taking them to see a spirit, and the spirit is going to determine for them which one is the avatar. Unfortunately, in exchange for that, the spirit feels entitled to eat the one that is not the avatar. So once it is revealed that Kyoshi is in fact the avatar, it eats Yoon. Now, Kyoshi is at this moment paralyzed by incense. Yoon is a little bit less paralyzed because he's been training against poisons specifically, but that doesn't save him from the spirit. They disappear into the spirit's cave. I think it gets bricked up instantaneously, something very final. And Kyoshi is horrified, and that's when Kelsang shows up to attempt to save the day, but instead he gets murdered by Shansu. Kyoshi flees with Kelsang's sky bison, and she takes Ranji along with her. And it's at this point revealed why Kyoshi needed a foster father to begin with. What happened was that her parents abandoned her. We're unclear on the exact reason because Kyoshi doesn't know why, but she got left as a 6-year-old in this small, miserable town. But when they left her behind, they also left behind this chest full of mystery stuff. Kyoshi knows what's in it, but most people don't. So Kyoshi opens it, and it is revealed that Kyoshi's parents are Dao Fei. And what a Dao Fei is essentially like a cross between a pirate and a gang member. It's really close to basically their gangs. And they have extremely strict codes of conduct, which murdering is fine as long as you're not murdering the people in your gang. Like, loyalty is the most important thing to the Dao Fei. So in your little squad, these are your family now. These are your brothers and your sisters, and the bond is deeper than blood. So to betray them would be the most heinous thing that you could do, which basically means because Kyoshi's parents were Dao Fei, Kyoshi has a connection to the Dao Fei group that they were a part of. So even though Kyoshi hates Dao Fei, she goes to seek the only connections that she has in these people. The main problem that Kyoshi is having is that Jansu is basically a very powerful diplomat. He knows everyone, and everyone knows him. A lot of people also know Yoon as the avatar, so Kyoshi doesn't feel that she really has any place to be like, well, actually, I'm the avatar, especially because she can't prove that she can use other types of bending yet because she doesn't know how. Ranji also hates the Dao Fei, being part of the extremely strict Fire Nation military, essentially. She has a very strict sense of the law and rightness and feels that the Dao Fei are basically scum. But they go and meet the Dao Fei anyway and become part of the Flying Opera Company, which is the name of this particular Dao Fei gang that was either founded by or led by, for a time, Kyoshi's parents. Fortunately, among these Dao Fei are another earthbender, which obviously she's lost her earthbending master because Yoon is not actually going to be part of the squad. That part shocked me, by the way. I was like, surely Yoon can't actually be dead. We just spent like 60 pages learning all about him and getting some backstory. He's got like this tragic past where all of the bending masters masters have pushed him way too far. But Yoon will definitely not be coming back to be Kyoshi's earthbending master, which means that Kyoshi needs a new earthbending master. And so one of the Dao Fei knows earthbending, and she's like, okay, great, I'm gonna learn from you. And then there's another one who is a waterbender. She's also got Ranji, which means that she only has to worry about air, and she's going to worry about doing that later. So we spend the rest of the book with Kyoshi basically trying to master the elements. She is also being taught at this time by this guy named Tigwe the Immortal. He has a fake name that he uses. He pretends to be this kind of alcoholic layabout with some important skills, but Kyoshi knows who he actually is and asks for lessons in murdering so that she will be prepared to kill Jiansu when she sees him again. And then we also get Jiansu's perspective as he tries to figure out how to get Kyoshi back under his thumb so that he can go ahead and be that mentor to the Avatar and regain that position that he has lost. So Kyoshi is counseled. She gets a couple of chances to murder people, which she refuses to do, and instead has this ongoing struggle of when is it a good moment to murder someone. There are several times when she's like, no, this person, I can't kill them because of this reason. And instead she comes up with a different solution. Tigwe is disappointed with her, but she's still kind of learning from him, meditating, but not like the way that other avatars meditate where they try to meet with their past lives, because she has nothing but hatred for her past life. She's like, you left the world a mess. There are all these Dao Fei gangs. The spirits are rowdy. So he died seemingly of alcoholism and illness, and he died quite young. And so she feels that because of his ineptitude, she has been left with a much more difficult Avatar era than she should be. Along the way, she and Ranji also fall in love, which they keep kind of a secret, but kind of not a secret because there aren't super compassionate feelings towards gay couples apparently at this time. So they kind of masquerade just as like close friends. She ends up murdering a prominent member of another Dao Fei group, the Yellownecks, when she releases him from prison, realizes her mistake, and battles him in basically a Dao Fei's version of Agni Kai, where they're like, okay, we battle each other, it's one-on-one, these are the rules. They do that. He kind of starts to win because he has lightning bending. She should be dead, but because she's the Avatar, she survives. He continues to use lightning against her. Ranji is screaming and screaming, and so Kyoshi gets pulled into the Avatar state because she cannot bear the sound of Ranji being so heartbroken. What Ranji seems to be seeing is that Kyoshi has been murdered, and now her body is being electrocuted again and again in a tremendous display of disrespect. So Ranji is horrified and heartbroken and screaming, and Kyoshi, who is very much alive, she is in, agony, but she did survive. And she hears Ranji screaming, and this pushes her into the Avatar state. She basically tornadoes him, and they're both in this tornado, and she has this moment of clarity where it's not just the wild power, the unrestrained power of the Avatar. It's Kyoshi with the power of the full Avatar state. And she thinks, should I kill this guy? And then she's like, yes. So she drops him, is the way that she decides to do that. She lets him fall, and that's how he dies, which okay, that's a way to do that. She has also learned how to bend small things, and the key is actually in the fans. So Kyoshi is always portrayed with those fans, like the Kyoshi warriors have, and the makeup. So the makeup is the colors red, black, and white. Those are the colors of the Flying Opera Company. Each of the gangs have their own set of colors. And so these are the colors of their Dao Fei group. So the makeup that Kyoshi is always portrayed as wearing is because she puts on the makeup of her Dao Fei group, similar to what her parents wore. So when she uses her fans, and a lot of times when she wears her makeup, she is much more powerful and much more able to handle things. Then this book culminates when she meets Jiansu in a tea house in the Earth Kingdom. They're having like this standoff where he is threatening to bring down this entire structure that they're in. She is using her earthbending to counteract him, but they're each really deeply concentrating on this. It is taking everything they have to maintain this silent struggle to prevent this building that they're in, this tea house, from coming down. And if the tea house comes down, a quantity of innocent people will be murdered, and Kyoshi refuses to allow that to happen. And that's when Yoon comes back. That's right, he's not dead, question mark? We're not sure at this point. He comes back, one of his hands is gray, and everyone is horrified. People see him, they don't know who he is, but they see him, and there's this aura of terror and wrongness. Everybody runs away from him, except for Jiansu and Kyoshi, who are in the middle of their bending battle. And then Yoon murders Jiansu. I think he stabs him like through the chest with like an earthbending pike, something like that. He's very dead. Kyoshi watches him die, and Yoon basically like winks at her, and he's like, "Be seeing ya," and then he disappears, and Kyoshi is like, what is going on? What just happened? My enemy's dead. And then we get this beautiful, complete lack of satisfaction for Kyoshi. She does not feel better now that Jiansu is dead. Earlier, she's talking to Ranji, and she screams that if she can murder Jiansu, she can feel safe again in the world. And there's also this ongoing battle of Kyoshi has all this rage, and after he dies, she thinks what a small vessel he is, and how he could not possibly have been large enough to contain all of the rage and the pain that Kyoshi carries. All of her grief, one mortal person, it's not enough. I really liked that. I thought it was great. She does the thing, she murders the enemy, and yes, probably the world is a little bit of a better place because he's dead, but it doesn't affect her emotional state. She still is grieving for the boy that Yoon used to be, because whoever that was not the friend that she knew. The life that she could have had, her father figure, all these things that Jiansu stole from her, his death is not able to bring those things back into balance. And I loved that as an ending. Then there's kind of a weird scene. It feels very like quick, like, oh, okay, we gotta lead into the next book, where she goes to an air temple. She is determined to be the avatar there. I think she proves it by water bending and earth bending, something like that. And she gets a vision from her past life saying that he needs her help. And that is where book 1 ends off. Book 2 kicks off with Kyoshi back in the Earth Kingdom, kicking Daofei butt, trying to save lives, threatening to murder people with her incredible power. She is terrifying, and she is not exactly the lofty avatar that many avatars of the past have been. She's really more of a brute force type of style. She shows up and she's like, okay, remember how I have all 4 bending elements and the avatar state at my disposal? If you don't stop being corrupt and ruining people's lives, I will just murder you. I will use all of my avatar powers to murder you. That is the way that she gets things done. Essentially, she threatens corrupt politicians to be a little bit less corrupt once she finds them doing something shady, and they are slowly forced back into line. She is working constantly, not eating enough. She's made a new air nomad friend, and his sky bison, Yin Yang. I love Yin Yang. He only has 5 legs. He's missing one of his 4 legs, which causes him, if he is not guided, to fly around in circles because his balance is thrown off. Yin Yang is the star of this book. So this book, even though it starts in the Earth Kingdom, actually mostly takes place in the Fire Nation. She gets a summons from the Fire Lord to come and meet with him, and she's like, yeah, I guess I'm supposed to do that at some point. It's been, I think, like 6 months or so since the end of book 1. And if you're wondering what is happening with Yoon, don't worry, so is Kyoshi. Fortunately, we get a couple of chapters from his perspective where we get to see him actually battling with the world borer, that evil, disgusting eyeball spirit. In his battle, he figures out that every time he wounds the eyeball spirit, it gets like a little bit smaller. So he keeps doing that until it's the size of like a regular eyeball. And then he talks to the spirit for a little bit. When he's able to get close enough, he grabs it and he eats it. It is the grossest description. There's like so much. I'm not going to talk about it. It's very gross. I didn't like this part. Unfortunately, doing that, you're really not supposed to eat spirits. So this causes a problem for Yoon. But he's not worried about it. He's like, you know what? I'm not being murdered by the spirit. Maybe I can get back into the physical realm. Things are better than they were a couple days ago when I was going to be eaten by the spirit. So, you know, things are looking up for Yoon in his perspective. And that is obviously a flashback scene to directly after Kyoshi's tragedy, directly after Yoon disappeared. Then we're back with Kyoshi in the Fire Nation. She and Ranji had separated temporarily, but now they are back together, and things are beautiful and wonderful and romantic between them. Once again, we get some great hilarious moments between them. I really just love the relationship between Ranji and Kyoshi. I think they're so fun and they're a great match. Unfortunately, everything else is going really, really badly for Kyoshi. There are a lot of really specific rules of etiquette and politics and ways that you're supposed to conduct yourself in the Fire Nation, which is really not how Kyoshi works. She's much more straightforward than that. So like there's this one scene where they're like, you have to meet the Fire Lord, but you can't just walk up and meet him. That's not how these things are done. You're supposed to walk through this crowd and kind of gently talk with people until you meet, as if two leaves have been like winded together. It's some elaborate metaphor about nature where they're supposed to, as if predestined by the universe rather than through force of will, they come upon each other. She's like, okay, so I have to go meet him. And they're like, no, you cannot go directly towards him because that is not how things are done. So instead, she starts walking through the room and they're like, okay, so you need to talk to people. But most people are not high rank enough for you to talk directly to them. Some of them will address you, and if they are high enough rank, you can speak back to them. But otherwise, you don't want to bestow your powerful ranking upon most people. You can ignore most people. Because at this point, everybody knows that she's the Avatar. It's been proven enough. Also, if you're wondering what happened with her past life saying, hey, Kyoshi, I need your help, she hasn't been able to connect with him. She keeps trying. It keeps not working. She's annoyed because all she gets from him are like vague visions and like little shreds of things. She's like, this isn't how it's supposed to work. I wish that my previous life hadn't been so crappy at this so that we could have a proper connection and I could learn what I'm supposed to be doing. So she tries to meet the Fire Lord. Things go horribly awry with the etiquette, and this is just the beginning, because then Yoon shows up in the Fire Nation and starts just wreaking havoc. There's a lot of tension already going on, a lot of political intrigue already happening in the Fire Nation, and he just plays it up and plays it up behind the scenes, and sometimes in front of the scenes. He is ruining everything in very brutal ways, too. So Kyoshi is like, what is going on? He must be possessed. That's got to be what it is. Something happened to him. Maybe the spirit that we saw is like in his body, and that's why he's being this way. So Kyoshi is finally able to connect with Kurek, her past life, when she is at her lowest point. Basically, everything spirals horribly. The Fire Nation is on the verge of civil war. Ranji is furious with her because her mother is basically like, Yoon is gonna come murder me. You have to let it happen. He wants revenge for essentially a terrible childhood in which he was pushed far too much. His training was brutal in many ways, and they were kind of training him to be an assassin. Ranji's mother, Heyron, is like, he's gonna try and murder me. You have to let it happen so that you can use me as bait, and then you can kill him, because he needs to not be in this world anymore. He is causing so many problems. You need to get rid of him. Kyoshi does not like this idea for several reasons. One, she doesn't really want to murder her old friend, who she feels is possessed. And two, she doesn't want to use Ranji's mother as bait because, one, she doesn't want to upset Ranji, and two, she really just doesn't want to do that to somebody that she respects. So Yoon shows up and tries to murder Hae-ran. Kyoshi has had a very ambiguous response to Hae-ran's plan so far. So when Yoon shows up, she gets distracted. Hae-ran is dying. She tries to save Hae-ran instead of pursuing Yoon. Yoon gets away, and while Hae-ran is being healed, Ranji finds out about this idea that the mother had. And Kyoshi's like, well, I didn't really agree to it. And Ranji's like, yeah, but you didn't try to stop her either. You didn't tell me what she was planning. Ranji's like, you and I were through. So things are getting rough with Ranji right now. Hae-ran insists that they're going to be able to make up, and Ranji comes back a couple pages later to be like, eat some soup, you're not eating. And she's furious with Kyoshi, but this has often been how Ranji shows her love. She's doing it in a much more harsh way now because she's still angry with Kyoshi for keeping this secret and allowing her mother to be used as bait, but she's still showing some affection. Things are still kind of rough though. And Hae-ran is really mad at her for not going and stopping Yoon. Meanwhile, Kyoshi gets this idea that, like, Yoon is possessed. She tries telling people what's going on. It gets really complicated and messy, and she ends up being horribly wrong. So Kyoshi starts to spiral into despair. She's at this low point where she does not want to exist. She doesn't want to be Kyoshi anymore. It is at this moment when she is finally able to make a connection with Kurek, her past life. There's a lot in this scene. She meets his spirit and she's furious with him. She screams at him. They go to battle, essentially. And he doesn't, lift a hand, but they're on this platform, and the platform is dissolving, and it is about to fall from underneath him, and there is some kind of void waiting, and she knows that she will actually damage Kurek's spirit in some way. I don't know how that would work if it's just a reflection of herself, if she would stop the avatarhood if she did this, but it is obvious that she can do some kind of damage, and she decides not to because she has realized that the world is not some kind of thing for her to take her temper out on. So she decides not to harm Kurek, and then they are able to have a heart-to-heart in which she learns that Yoon is not possessed. All of his actions are wholly his own, according to Kurek. Now, Kurek is very wise and has some really important information for Kyoshi, but I actually think the truth is much more complicated than what he says about Yoon, because the moment after Yoon eats the eyeball, his first instinct is to start digging a hole with his bare hands, which is weird. And what's weirder is that the text specifically goes out of its way to call out that this is of his own accord, which I think is an indication that there is a little bit of the world borer seeping through. Because the world borer is essentially like a celestial termite digging his way into the physical realm. He did this all throughout Kurek's life too, making holes from the spirit world to the physical world, and spirits would often crawl through, usually hungry, demented ones, and Kurek would kill them. That is what caused Kurek to die so soon, because when you kill a spirit, bad things happen to you. So he was dying and he could feel this emptiness, and he tried to fill that emptiness with alcohol. That is how he died, by murdering too many spirits that were trying to kill people. But believing that Yoon cannot be, that there is no way to save him because this is just who he is now, I think this is what allows Kyoshi to go into a final battle with him. This happens back at the estate where he was treated as the Avatar. It's basically like a fancy manor house where he was spoiled and waited upon, while at the same time receiving his horrifically harmful and cruel training. This final battle is so good. We get a whole lot of benders. We get Kyoshi's friends from the first book. They return. Ranji's there. Kyoshi's using all of her powers. The part of Kyoshi that was unwilling to hurt him has gone away here. So she is really actually trying to kill him. He is an extremely talented earthbender, though, and that is one of the reasons why they thought he was the Avatar. So he is able to hold his own against everybody, especially because, as he says, that she brought all these weaknesses along. Yoon has nobody that he would die to save, but Kyoshi has all of these other people that she could not stand if something happened to them. Yoon attempts to murder Ranji. He stabs her right through the chest with an earth-bent pike, and she goes down. Kyoshi is holding her. It's this really beautiful moment where Kyoshi and Ranji basically give their farewells because Ranji thinks she is going to die. I think it's this moment that finally completely dispels Kyoshi's last little shred of maybe I can get out of this without murdering Yoon. She tricks him, is how she eventually beats him. She starts apologizing and groveling and being this not blunt force that she has become. Instead, she goes back to being a servant, which is what she was at the beginning of book 1. In this moment of groveling, he approaches and gets close enough that she kills him. Specifically, and worth noting, Kyoshi kills 2 people on page in these books, and with both of them, she is completely in her own mind. She is not in the Avatar state when she commits these murders. She even goes out of her way to avoid looking at what she thinks will be Ranji's dead body in order to prevent herself from entering the Avatar state with grief. Yoon comes over to her and she essentially freezes his lungs and heart and kills him that way with her water bending. And then she uses a similar technique, but different, to lower Ranji's body temperature long enough that a more competent healer can show up and save her. I think it's really interesting that they portray Kyoshi this way, that in 1 second she is using her water bending to murder someone, and in the next she is using it to save someone. And that scene alone, I think, really shows her style as an Avatar, that she will deal death with one hand and protect who she perceives as the innocent with the other. There are also a lot of mysteries that we don't actually get an answer to. Like, we don't get a definite answer of whether Yoon was affected by the World War or not. That is left up to interpretation. We don't know for certain why her parents abandoned her in this little village. They have ideas and theories, and Kyoshi has beliefs as to why this might have happened, but we never get an actual answer. We also never learn what's up with Tigwe the Immortal. What is up with her immortal assassin friend? And I absolutely love that we don't get the answers to these things. It feels really similar to the original series in that way, because there were things that were never explained. There were magics that were beyond just the scope of the series. And Kyoshi felt like that too, because of those things. It makes the world seem so large and amazing. I loved everything about all of this, and I guess with that I will be finished with spoilers and talk about my overall feelings about the books. I absolutely adored these 2 books. These are probably going to be some of my favorites for the year, maybe new favorites overall. I'm going to be buying my own copies so that I can read them anytime, because I just adored these. They were surprisingly incredibly good, and I don't know why I was surprised, but they have been amazing. I loved Kyoshi and her squad. All the characters felt so real, and I loved the bonds. There were definitely a couple of moments when I felt like, oh, we could have seen more of this. We could have seen more of this bond so that we really feel it and understand it. There's a little bit more depth that I think could have been had between certain members, but I think overall they were all really beautifully done and beautifully developed. The writing style was really clean and clear and direct without being sparse or abrupt, and all the struggles that all the characters went through were really heart-wrenching. The humor definitely felt similar to that Avatar: The Last Airbender style of humor, even though these books tend to run much darker than the original series. There were even a few moments where I felt like, that didn't really make sense. I felt like they kind of sacrificed what would make sense in order to make that humor work, but I think it was forgivable overall, and they were really minor things. I did say this in my spoilers section already. This is not a spoiler, but I apologize to those of you who already saw it. There were a lot of loose threads that were not entirely fleshed out or that weren't tied up. And at first that kind of annoyed me, but now looking back, I absolutely love it because it makes the world feel so much larger than just this duology. There are magics that we don't understand, questions that have been left unanswered. I think they were done really well, not in an unsatisfactory way, but in the magic is grander than one individual person could ever find out on their own. And there are things in the universe that no power will ever be able to truly understand or to get to the bottom of. I have no idea what this series would be like for somebody who has not seen the show, but I highly recommend that too. If this book series sounds like one that you would be interested in, I really suggest you watch the Avatar: The Last Airbender show first. If you've already seen it and you're wondering if these books are worthwhile, definitely yes. They are so good, so worthwhile. You get so much lore and world building, and I absolutely love them. They have actually kind of re-sparked some of my enjoyment of the Avatar: The Last Airbender series, and I'm going to be going back and probably rewatching that, and definitely for the first time watching Korra all the way through. These books were fantastic. I like them more the more I reflect on them. If you've read them, I would love to hear your opinions. Keep it spoiler free or give a warning, please, in the comments. If you have not read them, I hope you pick them up, and I appreciate you spending time listening to me ramble about them. That's finally all I have to say for now. So, have a beautiful night, universe.